Every year, he comes back. I know he's coming tonight. He always does. I don't know why I'm even posting this. I keep telling myself that maybe somebody out there will know how to fix everything. But really, I think deep down, I just want to have my story out there, so that if tonight turns out to be my last, someone will know what happened. I've lived through the same night every year since 2010. But even after 15 years, the terror of that first night won't leave me. The scent of old carpet and mothballs had been overwhelming the first time I walked into the apartment. But the odor did little to quell my excitement over my first solo apartment. The walls may have been scuffed and the carpet pockmarked with mysterious stains, but for the first time in my life, I had space that was truly mine. I spent the afternoon unpacking and putting away my few belongings. I didn't have much in way of furniture yet, but I did have a metal folding chair for the living room and a lumpy secondhand mattress covered by a thin blanket for my bedroom. My mismatched dishes set in cabinets whose doors didn't even shut or were entirely missing, and my clothes sat in a duffel bag, along with a few personal effects next to my bed. To anyone else, it would have looked like a bachelor pad from hell, but I could not have been prouder. It may have been a little rough around the edges, but it was mine, and I looked forward to putting in the work to improve it. By the time I had finished putting everything away, I was exhausted. At the time, I worked at a local call center and spent most of my day on my ass, so I didn't exactly have the best stamina. The second I finished, I trudged into my bedroom and flopped down on my shitty old mattress. I'm fairly sure I was unconscious before I even landed. The sound of shattering glass ripped me from my slumber. Any lingering fatigue that should have plagued me was dissipated by a surge of adrenaline as my hand instinctively went into my duffel bag to retrieve my revolver. I quickly pulled the hammer back and scrambled to my feet. I want to say I'd left my room to bravely confront the intruder, but I was frozen in place. My legs felt as if they'd belonged to a newborn deer and threatened to give out underneath me if I even attempted a step forward. Instead, I watched my bedroom door intently as my heartbeat drowned out any further noise inside the apartment. The same fear that had claimed my legs seized my body for just a moment as I watched the dull brass knob slowly turn and the old wooden door creak open. I couldn't make out anything in the dark except for a pair of ice blue eyes illuminated by the moonlight. As we locked eyes, it felt as if time stood still. For a moment, I hoped that he had seen my gun and thought better of whatever he had planned. I thought he'd close my bedroom door and turn around and leave. Unfortunately, he seemed to have something different in mind. The second he took a step toward me, I acted before I could even think. The first shot rang with a sudden deafening crack, but in my panic, I had hardly registered it. 4 more followed in statico. Each shot caused the ring in my ears to grow louder until I was unable to hear clicks that followed the 5th shot. When I finally realized I was out of ammo, I dropped the gun to the floor and stared down at the man on the floor, either dead or soon to be. At that moment, any emotions I should have felt were drowned out by an overwhelming silence, as if my heart was as paralyzed as my legs. All I could do was stare down at the intruder as the night clung to him like a suffocating death shroud, wrapping his body in a darkness that felt too deep, too final. I don't know how long I spent staring at the body, but I still hadn't moved by the time the cops arrived. The months that followed felt like a blur of paperwork, court dates, and endless questioning. In those months, I was forced to relive the worst night of my life over and over again as cops and lawyers attempted to make me look like a criminal. But the worst of it all was the trial where I was forced to face the other man's family and how I shot someone precious to them. That night, I may have saved my own life. A mother lost a son. A woman lost her husband, and a pair of children lost their father. It was the children that cut me the deepest, with their eyes ice blue. His eyes, staring up at me with a cocktail of hate and grief. I still see their faces when I close my eyes sometimes. Ultimately, the jury ruled I'd acted in self-defense, and I was found innocent. Although, it was a hollow victory. After that day, my neighbors and coworkers started to look at me differently. They were polite to my face, but I could see it on their faces. They were trying to figure out if I was actually innocent, or if I was a monster hidden wearing a mask of a victim. I didn't blame them. It was a question that I had spent countless nights grappling with myself. Even though I had been cleared of any wrongdoing, something changed inside of me that night. It felt as if the horror of that night clung to me like a second skin. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar car parked outside, every stray sound in my apartment sent my heart into a frenzy. For a moment, I was transported back to that night and smothered by the suffocating weight of what I had done all over again. A few weeks after the trial concluded, I decided to get help. Progress was slow, but with the aid of my therapist, I was able to begin to rebuild myself. We decided it was best for me to get a fresh start. So with the help of a friend, I found a new apartment that was a little nicer than my old one. This one smelled a little more like nicotine than I would have liked, but I preferred the ghost of previous tenants' bad habits over those that haunted me previously. None of my new neighbors gave me wary side eyes in the hallways or talked about me in hushed whispers in the mailroom. It felt as if things were getting back to normal again, as if nothing ever happened. By the time the anniversary of the shooting came around, I no longer experienced panic attacks every single time a strange car passed my window or someone knocked on my door. Until that night, when I was awoken by the sound of shattering glass in my apartment. My body moved before my mind caught up, and my hands instinctively reached out for the wooden baseball bat that I kept beside my bed. The court had yet to release my revolver from evidence, and up until that moment I'd been grateful for that. I still wasn't ready to have that thing back in my home. I felt like the memories attached to it would taint my fresh start, like a maggot writhing its way through fruit. The newborn deer feeling had returned to my legs, but I was able to muster up just enough courage to approach my bedroom door. My heart pounded inside my chest, and my grip tightened around the bat until my knuckles ached. I tried desperately to control my short, ragged gasps for air with breathing techniques my therapist had taught me. I nearly loosened my grip on my weapon before the slight click of the doorknob being turned snapped me back to high alert. This time, I did not hesitate as the door creaked open and I swung the bat with all my might at the intruder. Just before my blow connected, I caught a glimpse of a pair of all too familiar blue eyes. In that moment, something primal took over and acted without hesitation. Before the intruder could recover, I stood over him with another powerful blow ready. I brought the solid wooden bat down onto him again and again. Each meaty thud was its own plea for an encore, until the intruder's skull split open and his head movement stopped. I let the bat drop from my aching hands, and I stared down at the brutalized face of the man I had a year ago. As the adrenaline drained from my body, my legs finally gave out beneath me. I collapsed on my knees in front of the crumpled corpse. My breaths were short and ragged from an unfamiliar exertion as I gazed down at the brutalized face that haunted my dreams. His jaw hung at a sickening angle, dislocated and fractured in multiple places. His mouth gaped as his frozen mid-scream, displaying jagged, broken teeth and swollen, bloodied gums. His cheekbones had caved in, leaving a grotesque indentation where they had been stuck. His nose was a flattened mess of blood and cartilage, and his eye had already swollen shut in a mix of purple and black.
dark crimson spilled from the deep, jagged fracture that ran along his temple, where the bone had given way under the relentless assault to reveal the pulped tissue underneath. The brutality of the attack had transformed his features into something monstrous, but even still I recognized his face. His lifeless and unfocused eyes stared up at me through agony and death itself with a hatred I'd not seen since the trial. My hands trembled as I reached down, grabbed the front of his shirt, and slowly lifted it. My stomach twisted. 5 jagged holes in his torso, still raw and weeping. Then everything went black. The next morning, I woke lying in the doorway. The bat was still there. It had clattered the ground the night before. But the body was gone. My therapist had warned me that the anniversary of the event would always be difficult for me. So I wondered if I just dreamt the entire thing or suffered some sort of stress-induced hallucination. That is, until I noticed the shards of glass that littered the floor just below my living room window. Since then, I've spent every year dreading tonight. I've had to kill him every year for 15 years. And every year he comes back, both of us bearing the scars of previous encounters. It still hasn't gotten any easier. I know he's already dead, but death weighs on me with the same gravity as the first. I've tried making booby traps, barricading my windows or doors, even staring over at a friend's house. However, through circumstances beyond my control, I always seem to end up somewhere alone on that night. No matter what obstacles I put in place, he will always break in, and I will always be forced to take his life, as if the universe itself has deemed it to be so. I don't know what to do anymore. Even after my fresh start, it seems I can't escape the sins of my past. This is the first time I've ever told anyone about my situation. I don't think anyone would believe me even if I had tried. I know I can't go to the cops. I don't even know how to begin to explain any of this without getting committed. I only recently discovered this place, and after reading a few posts, I thought maybe somebody would know what is happening to me. Even if they don't know how to make it stop, just the thought that I'm not the only one to have experienced something like this would be a comfort. I know he's coming tonight. I just heard the glass break in the other room. Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to today's story. And thank you so much to Half a McDouble over at r/NoSleep for this amazing story. Go check it out, it's on the pinned comments below. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing, that would also be a big help for this channel. We're fairly new and hoping to get some backing. Thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next video.